And I got to tell you, there are times where we get to the place and we're in trouble when we say, I can do it. Because the moment we say, I can do it, we leave God out of the equation. And people do that all the time. I can do this. I've got this. I got to tell you, when we became missionaries, I was pretty satisfied with my ability, and I thought, I can get this stuff done. I can do a lot of things. I preach okay. I can lead the church. I do some leadership development. We do evangelism. We're seeing people won to Christ on a regular basis. The Lord said, yeah, I'm going to send you somewhere else. And it became a little bit harder, like a lot harder. And we got to a place where I couldn't speak. In fact, somebody, after I was struggling through the language for the first couple of months, I said, how am I doing? Somebody said, you're doing great. You're about at the level of a 4-year-old. Okay, great. But it's a good 4-year-old. So I needed to learn the language, so what do? I planted a church. I just thought, well, plant a church. And the church started growing. Lots of people were coming to church. I thought it was my good preaching. Somebody came up to me after one of the services and said, you know why people come? We don't have television. And it was in a very poor place. And they said, and you're hilarious because you butcher our language. So, I'd invite people to come forward to receive Jesus. They'd come. One time I tried to tell them to come forward because I wanted them to, Ibirihin si Jesus lobang ang inyong puso. I tried to say, invite Jesus into your heart. Instead of puso, I said pusa, which is your cat. I said, you can just come forward and receive Jesus into your cat, and he'll change you. He'll change you totally. People came forward. They got saved. This one woman looked at me afterwards, tears streaming down her face, said, the Lord has taken a burden from my life. I'm a Christian. I'm saved now. And she looked at me and she winked and she said, I'm going to go home and tell my cat. Isn't that awesome? Yeah, that's right. I was making mistakes all the time, and I went out and literally cried one night because I'd made some mistakes that offended people. I had really hurt some people, and it was innocent stuff. It was just cultural problems. And I remember looking up at the sky, and I thought, what are you doing? I can't do this. I use that word, I can't do this. And I knelt on my knees. I was out, the kids were asleep. Marlene was asleep. I was walking in the middle of the night in Manila, and I fell on my knees, and I said, God, I can't do this. And a peace came over me, and it was almost like an audible voice that says, I can. And he did. I was sweating stuff. I was fretting things. I wasn't sure what to do. I went back to the church like the next week, I went to this little church that we'd started in a community. We wanted to plant a church in an area where nobody spoke English because, you can learn the language that way. So it was a very poor area. It was in a place called Letre Malabon in Metro Manila. And we started a church there, and it was growing, and it was thriving, etc. But I was still using cheat sheets and notes and stuff like that to preach. I was using translators still, all that kind of stuff. And I showed up one day, and I parked my car, and a bunch of young people came up, and adults, and they were, kind of alarmed. Their eyes were big, and meron ng demonyo sa loob ang lalaki doon, talika, hurry up, there's a demon inside of a young man. And so I just initially, I thought, oh my goodness, I can't speak Tagalog. How am I going to cast a demon out? And so I'm walking the way, and I'm fretting how I'm going to deal with this. And I get to the house, and just like every good Free Methodist member, the members are all gathered around me, and they're leading me, they're in front of me, they're beside me, they're behind me. I get to the house where the young man is that's done all these, hideous things there, and this demonstrating some real bizarre, behaviors and multiple languages, and words were coming out of his mouth. They opened the door and they shoved me in and closed the door. So those are good Free Methodist lay people, right there. Yeah. That's the universal language. They do that in the Philippines too, just like America. So I'm standing there, I'm just trying to craft my words together or whatever, and this guy opens his mouth, his tongue's out, his tongue and mouth are not moving, and then perfect American English voice. This demon says, we know who you are and why you're here. Get out. And I thought, oh, good, he speaks English. I just remember thinking, that's awesome. This is like shooting fish in a barrel, man. It's one of those things where you say, I can't do that. The whole way I'm going, I can't do this. And I get in there and I go, but there's a God.